this is where we handle critical issues with a view to proffering solutions so that change can happen. You do understand that change is the only constant thing in life. It is Tuesday and it's the 11th day in the month of February 2025. It seems this month of February is on a race, like it doesn't want to spend too much time with us like the month of January did. Well, that's what I think. I do not know what my co-hosts this morning think. Dr. Idahosa Osamhanze, good morning.
Good Nigeria, again here this morning to unpack the things that shapes the world. February is running, I guess.
Okay.
And, I think...
it's a good race.
Well, a good race, but there's a comma there.
I know why. And Oyinpreye Krumale.
Good morning to you, Blessing. Good morning to you, Doctor.
Good morning.
It's a great day. It's a fantastic Tuesday.
Okay.
For us to... you were talking about the month running.
Yes.
Please, let it run unhindered.
Okay.
Unhindered.
Okay. One doesn't really want the month to run, the other wants it to run. But for me, I'm just indifferent. Anyone.
Unhindered.
Eventually the month will end. Well, Priya just called out my first name. I wanted you to be guessing. Have I changed name? Well, I haven't yet. My name is Blessing Eichie, and this is the Front Bonus. We have some stories that have made the headlines that we want to look at this morning. You do know, if you've been following the show, that is segmented. There is a news analysis, there is policy discuss, and of course, post and perspective, where we get to hear from you. But this time around, let's look at some of the stories that have made the headlines. One of them is that the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, has inaugurated the Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion to bridge financial gaps and drive economic growth. Now, the composition of the Presidential Committee, with membership drawn from the sub-nationals, key ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government and the private sector, underscored the commitment of President Tinubu in attaining his administration's $1 trillion target for the economy. Now, I thought there was a committee already set up by the president, the economic team. So this is one to bridge financial inclusion, the gap in financial inclusion, and also for the economy. Are we having two committees pursuing the same cause?
Well, I saw the news, and of course, there's a whole lot that's been said around it. But I'm not too quite very optimistic about committees, because one of my mentors always would tell me that if you don't want a thing to happen, then you set up committee. And so when one committee finishes the work, another committee comes to review what was done, and then set up another committee to review what the other...
So it's committee after committee.
Committee after committee. And for me, issues of financial inclusion and economic empowerment, I don't think it's something that requires so much of committee. There are things that government should actually put measures in place to get this done. What we are having here is that you're talking about financial inclusion, talking about moving people who are unbanked. And one thing that was actually missing in that inauguration yesterday is the fact that the terms of reference of that committee was not clearly stated. Everybody make speeches, goodwill messages, inaugurating the committee, but not in the purview of the press that this is the terms of reference of this committee, that we are hoping that this committee that is set up, they have 6 months to operate, they have 1 year to operate, 3 years to operate, and in 3 years, these are the data that we're expecting to get, that all Nigerians at this point would have been banked and all of all that. So the terms of reference are not clear. So we just say financial inclusion. And I think government will do well that when you are setting up a committee, you have to also put terms of reference. Today in business world, they call it the KPIs. So we know what the committees should be doing. That we are not just, again, putting people in together, okay, maybe a kind of reward system. But the society has responsibility to know what these people will be doing on a day-to-day basis, what is the mandate that is given to them, and what are specific tasks that are assigned to them. Now, that said, is to see that how can we be talking about financial inclusion when access to internet here is still very low, below 60%, and you are talking about an environment where we don't even know who is who in this space. And these are things that we will have to deal with over the period of time. India has done that successfully through government policy to include over 500 poor Indians in financial services. And that's working. In Rwanda, everybody, whether educated or uneducated, urban, rural, everybody is financially included. And that's just a small technology. They call it the Momo technology in Rwanda. Anywhere you get to, people can do transactions just on their phone. They don't need internet. They can do it. So these are things that have been done elsewhere. And I think committee structure, reviewing things that, of course, are within the purview and the mandate of people who are already existing. And I don't think it's something for me that I'm quite excited about. I just have loved that the coordinating minister of the economy would have given some measures out to CBN, and then, of course, to say, well, we want financial inclusion. Let private sector who can help us drive that process in terms of creating technology that will help us drive it. Let them submit bids and quotations, and then we see things working. So we wait for this committee, we don't know for how long, to come report to the president and say, oh, this is what we have done, or to the vice president, and then we receive reports. And then, of course, the president had to sit down with his committee team to also consider what the committee has done. And all this is taking a whole lot of time. And I think that we should be in a hurry to get a lot of things done, especially those things that are not too technical, that other people have done that we can just copy and paste.
Now, it does actually look like a committee, really, because of the, like you said, there are no KPIs, there are no clear-cut roadmap towards achieving financial inclusion. And the other time when we spoke about the National Assembly wanting to collect data of Nigerians living in diaspora, it was as though they were wanting to embark on a duty that is already assigned to the ambassadors and to the NIDCOM. So it seems like you're stepping into a field of responsibility that are assigned. It's the CBN's mandate to ensure financial inclusion. Now, even if they want to step in, I think it would have been a consultation with CBN. What is the roadmap towards achieving financial inclusion? Fine, you've been able to attain about 52%, but there's still about 48% unbanked population in Nigeria. What collaboration is going to happen between the conventional banks and the fintechs to close this gap? Because the fintechs seem like they would be more equipped right now to close that gap, because areas where you cannot have branches of banks, fintechs can spread to that area, and people now on their phones open accounts without all of the protocols that they have to go through using the conventional bank system. So that would have been it. I do not think that it's a weighty matter to make the vice president set up a committee, more especially when there's already an economic team. So it's more like they're pursuing close to the same goal, though this one seems to be directly hinged on financial inclusion, but there's an economic team already. So maybe that economic team should have factored in that if we had more of our population banked, it will further boost our economy, and it will make small business owners or even people have access to credit. Perhaps that's the idea behind this. So it's more like giving an already assigned task to someone else, and I think the CBN should be the forerunner in this case.
Okay, first of all, leadership. When you look at this administration and you take a look at the way and manner it's been, putting together its policies, the direction that its policies should go, the policy framework that it tends to communicate to Nigerians, you see something that I think is outstanding, but it shouldn't be in mere words. What I consider as seeing to be outstanding is the ambitious nature of this administration, the government. When we talk about the number of barrels per day that we should be producing, or what the 2025 budget is currently hinged on, we see 2 million barrels per day. When we talk about reducing inflation, either from 48% or from 38% down, the government is looking at reducing it down to 15%. When we move forward a little, and we look at the government planning the financial roadmap for the administration. It's since 2024, it's been eyeing a $1 trillion economy. And we've all considered this to be quite ambitious, though laudable, but Nigerians are not new to these aspirations that are of great value, that that will tingle the ear and make you want to pay attention the second time. They want to see the government working. I equally know that the office of the vice president most times is attached to economic matters, the national economic team, the national economic forum. Most times it seems that the vice president heads that office. And if you pay very good attention, the recently concluded International Economic Forum,
World Economic
Forum, World Economic Summit, we see the presence of the vice president there trying to sell Nigerians to the world and to see how we can, bring in investors to come into our country to invest so that we could be a very good channel for us to attract foreign direct investment into our nation. However, looking at the financial inclusion aspect, it's a journey that we have started since 2012. And this strategy that we want to make Nigerians, the unbanked sector, to be banked, I personally don't think we are going around it the right way. We would have gone around it the right way if we had included the fintechs from the beginning. But as we speak now, we all know how the economy between the conventional banking system and the fintech, how they are, jostling here and there. Oh, let's make sure they are disbanded. No, let them be, and all of that.
Some sort of rivalry.
There's a very huge and strong rivalry. And you see, the government seems to be sort of indifferent about it, because it doesn't look like the government is taking a step or is making a decision to say, oh, this is the way we are going concerning this matter. We should allow the fintechs, they've come to stay. And even the government and the conventional banking system knows that we can't get them out. But this financial inclusion that we talked about, look at the way the conventional banking system is operating it. Doc mentioned the Momo app or the Momo system of financial inclusion in one of the African countries. If you go to Kenya, the M-Pesa is being used there. Well, if you come down to Nigeria, you are a little bit confused, because you are asking, is it either the POS system or is it the fintech system? Because if it is the POS system, friends, that's not financial inclusion. We are buying our own money. And we saw how it became very, very severe on Nigerians who have to work to earn the little they can earn. Then during they call it the Emefiele era of
during the cash scarcity,
the cash crunch, the cash scarcity, Nigerians needed to get access to their money, and they had to buy their own money. Until now, we are still buying our own money, even though for a lesser amount. But
okay. So
that's we cannot really call that financial inclusion. If we are going to call anything financial inclusion, let the government sit down with these non-conventional entities, with regards to banking though, and which are the fintechs, and sit down to draw up a regulatory framework, but not a regulatory framework, that will restrict and constrain them from having them to use all these bottlenecks the way the conventional banking system is using.
There's a bottleneck. And I think the environment itself is also becoming a lot more flexible. A lot of people are having to do so many things. And both the tier 1, tier 2 microfinance banks are also in their element doing what they can do. But you see, there are also fundamental issues that we have to address in terms of what give people access to modern banking system. There's a cultural dimension to it. I said this on this table some time ago. people would naturally want to go open a bank account and do business with the bank. But when I did a study some time ago in the North, one of the issues that came out in that study was the fact that many people didn't want to do banking with the regular commercial banks because religion would not allow them leave their money in those banks because they are thinking that that money could be invested in things that are anti their religion. So even some of them who were working just allow the money drop and they are waiting on the ATM to move the money out of the bank because they are conscious of religion. That's one aspect of it. So that cultural aspect, there's a need for enlightenment. And that's why you find that the call for Islamic Bank has been on since independence. So we're asking that these people say, look, we want a system where we can sit down with those who manages the bank and determine how our money is to be expended. That ensuring that we are not putting the money where our religion forbids. That's one dimension to it. Another dimension is the fact that you're also having a population who live in the rural area. They don't have access to telephone. And in some places, networks are not even available. And now, for this person to be able to do transaction and send money so that even the CBN will be able to see all the money as they're moving around in the environment is also very difficult. And that's where it talks about the area of infrastructure development. Because you cannot be talking about financial inclusion without also putting the infrastructure that will support that inclusion in place. You go to some communities, maybe they have to travel like 2-3 kilometers before they can go to where a microfinance bank is or even a regular commercial bank to do those activities. And of course, you also know that because these banks also are driven by the profit maximization, they are also thinking where they are going to put their banks and set up their branches. And that's where these exclusion thing become very difficult. Now, if you have rural populations that are not very enlightened, even using the app from your Android or iOS phone become also very difficult, and they don't have those access. And I think that we want to get people to be involved, then we must also be involving in infrastructure that takes all these things so that even if a bank wants to go and set up a branch in a very remote rural area, then of course they will have access to internet also to be able to connect with their branch office at the city center. Now, all this has not been put in place. And of course, we cannot be talking about getting to the heart of those rural areas where these unbanked people live without putting those infrastructure there. So I'm hoping that what federal government should have been doing right now is to say, how are we going to build more robust infrastructure system, especially in the area of telephony and internet, so that people who live in the rural area, who don't even know what to do, like Blessing has said, people just on their mobile phone today with their telephone number can open bank account, and they don't need to go and pull things here and there to say, okay, so you just get that working. But that can only work in the environment where you have access. But in the areas where there are no access, it's obviously going to be very difficult. That if people can actually use telephone to pay in, they can also use telephone also to even borrow, because that's the whole idea of financial inclusion. So all this is what needs to be put in place in terms of infrastructure. The microfinance can do the minimum they can. And CBN has been giving licenses as many. FinTech has been supported by government and is driving that environment. Recently, there was even a study that FinTech is doing much more than what the conventional banks are doing. So I think those opportunities are already there in the space. But the basic, which is, of course, where these 40% of the people live, is in the rural area, and they don't have access to basic infrastructure that will allow transactions to take place, really.
I think another issue too is that of the operations of the banking system, particularly those in the conventional banking system. For those who are banked already, there's a disincentive. It's just because it's a necessity a lot of times that people still use the banking system. Let's use the cash scarcity period, for example. That system seems to have come to stay because the POS operators which were set up initially to bridge this gap have been used for a different purpose and are being constantly used for a different purpose. So you go to ATM, points, you can't have cash. But you find POS operators, even at the ATM stands, offering you cash if you would only patronize them, but at a cost. So the cost of transaction keeps increasing. The deductions are increasing. There's maintenance charge, there's withholding tax, there's a lot of charges. Before, when you put your money in the bank and you're operating a savings account, there's a particular interest that accrues to your money at the end of the month. Whatever percentage, no matter how little it is, but something comes to your account at the end of the month. But these days, how many banks do pay that? Sometimes they tell you, oh, it's conditional. So if you make a certain number of transactions on that account within a month period, you do not qualify for interest. So you have to make limited transactions on that account before you can have access to interest paid. That's another disincentive. There are so many other reasons people would even prefer to say, I don't want to put my money in the bank because when I need the money back, sometimes I have to go through. It's almost like you want to go through the eye of the needle, being able to access your money, particularly within the festive period. And so this is where the fintech operators have sort of come in to provide some cushion for Nigerians. But you still need the operations of the conventional bank system to make that cash available because they work in sync. You may have your money domiciled or have an account with a fintech operator, but the money still comes through the conventional banking system. So I think a lot needs to be done. This rewiring of the POS system, which was supposed to act like the Momo system in other parts of the country, other parts of Africa rather, so people who can't have bank accounts can go there and have payments done and also make withdrawals at very limited cost. That system should be reworked by the CBN. So I think it's the CBN really, that committee, if they want to achieve the aim, should prevail on the CBN to ensure that there is monitoring of every financial institution, be you a commercial bank, be you a microfinance institution, be you a fintech, and even those who are getting these POS machines. Are they supposed to be getting it? For what purpose are they supposed to be getting it? Do we need to deploy more of this to the rural areas? You know, these are part of the questions that I think this committee should be asking. They should more or less be doing an oversight function because they really do not have any direct role to play when it comes to bridging the gap because there is an institution that is saddled with that responsibility. So more or less, there should be oversight function prevailing on them to ensure that rural areas, you go in there, the system that has been set in place so that those in the rural areas can have access to it, then they have it. But I think the banking sector needs to work more now with the telcos because they provide the connectivity for them. And there's also the issue of power, where some of them have been able to cite banks. It seems like the cost of operation is much because they do not have a lot of businesses in those rural areas. But I think with the right collaboration, the telcos coming together with the banking sector, and then the fintechs being fully annexed, then we can get there.
Yeah, okay. I think it's also to also look at the POS infrastructure and what it is. It's easy for us to expect that POS will not sell money because the truth of the matter is, number one, there's also a cost that is involved in you having to stay to dispense cash to people. And that person who is doing that job is not an employee of the bank or the microfinance that is dispersing or releasing those POS. But you see, like other advanced claim, what really happens is that POS are deployed to supermarkets, stores, so that people, rather than carrying cash, should actually do transaction without necessarily having to touch cash. That's the whole idea about the POS technology. But of course, you live in an environment where cash is fundamental. A lot of people need to touch cash. And so that demand for cash, I think that's what's actually creating the incentive for those people who operate POS outside. I saw a scenario 2 days ago. I was to buy fuel, and in a filling station, and the guy said to me, "Are you swiping card or you're doing transfer?" Because if you are swiping card, there's a cost attached to it. So I have to pay for every 10,000, 50 naira. But if it's transfer, I don't need to pay. So all those platforms are valuable. Although I saw it only in that filling station, because where I bought today, I didn't find that charge. See, everybody inventing their own rules. And I think it's also very important that communication of whatever policy the government is putting in place is quite important. That even if we are going to say these things, so that even the person in the rural village, some of all these things have to be translated into local languages, so that the people in the rural area actually understand what is required of them when they are doing transactions and the things that they can do. There are USSD that people use to send money today, and that is possible. But that will only be possible if the person has a bank account.
Okay.
And for the bank account to be done, and that's why I feel for me it's really not a committee issue, is government understanding why people are not having bank accounts, and then of course addressing those needs of people who are not having bank accounts. But I think if it is part of the terms of reference of the committee to actually engage people to get into the rurals, to understanding the motivation behind account opening, especially for people who live in the interior, then of course maybe we'll be heading toward the right direction at the end of the day.
Okay, I have to quickly inject this before we move out. Now, we all know that the POS system was introduced for entities that carry out sales and services to the populace. However, when the system was now turned around to a money-making venture, we could see that the CBN does not have the capacity to control the way and manner commercial banks issue out the POS to the people who operate this system. So it is safe to say the commercial banks abused the system for their own personal gain. No, I know that the National Economic Forum, headed by the Vice President, is prioritizing infrastructure. So we cannot continue to say that those who are being unbanked, they are in the interior, in the rural areas, so it's getting very difficult. I think that should be the priority for this initiative. And that being said, there was a time that a specific senator from the northern part of the country was complaining that for like 20 years or probably 15 years or so, there has not been bank in his constituency down there in the north. And a lawmaker was saying that I think such problems are easy because speak to either someone who is with an investor, either in the commercial banking system, provide them land in that specific place. Let them come build.
Provide them security.
Provide them
security. And
who is doing the provision?
I'm talking about where it has because to be it needs to liaise. It needs to liaise with the state government. It needs to liaise with the federal government. It needs to liaise with the local government. Also, it also needs to liaise with the state internal revenue service, who will now, on behalf of the state, also liaise with the Federal Inland Revenue Service for us to make sure that if these people at the ebb of society can be banked, then we have to create a system where we do not charge or tax these people for them to make this infrastructure available to the ebb of society. Obasanjo did this when the telecommunications was coming into Nigeria. He let them off tax at the prior stage. And they came in and they made lots of money. Then we came in to start collecting tax, and now we're even taking them to court to be paying billions of naira, which is bringing money into the economy. I think we should adopt the same strategy so we can attend to the needs of the people at the ebb of society, since we want them to be financially inclusive.
There's a role of the local
licenses. They didn't give them tax free.
There's a role of the local government. Let's leave that so we don't digress. There's a role of the local governments here. So I think that when it comes to development, it should not be a thing that it's only the federal government or only the state government that plays the role. The local government have the role to play. For a bank to be established in the rural area, there are different concerns. They are concerned about security, which the local government can do in conjunction with the Nigerian police force. They want to see at least a police post in that area because they're also thinking, so what if crime happens? Something that would at least serve like a deterrent to people who were thinking in that direction. They want to see that happen. They want to see access roads because they would have staff who would live there. They want to be able to get to their workplace. They also want to see certain conditions in place so that those who work there can have livable conditions. This is where the local government can come into play. When you provide some of these things, it is quite easy for you to reach out to a bank to say, come site a branch in my locality. And then they are thinking of it, okay, how many businesses do you have? Who are the customers that we're going to have if we come site a branch there? They begin to factor all of that. But the basic things need to be on the ground first before the bank can be talking of citing a branch there. Now, to the issue of the POS charges, there would have been no need for people to go over to POS if they were going to the ATMs as they were doing before and finding cash there. People started visiting or patronizing POS stands more when they were frustrated. Get into the bank, sometimes you don't find cash. Get into the ATM, you don't find cash.
You outside the bank.
You find the POS cash. So those who now have cash began also to sell it and say, you are doing business with it. So if I have cash, I'd rather hold it and sell to the next person who wants to buy.
Look at those examples.
So effectively do
See,
it.
but what
They
I'm
get the
saying
POS
is
machine.
that
So it all comes back
we don't
to the
need
commercial
cash.
banks. We do need cash
I think
at this level.
We don't.
We are
We
not
do need
evolved
cash. I
to a
think we are
society
too
that
much
can
in
operate
a
without cash.
haste.
What do we need cash for?
We are
We're
not
too
yet
much in a
mature
haste.
for a totally cashless system.
Society,
we tried
we have
that
not
before
built
and we
the
saw
infrastructure
how
for that
it's
purpose.
boomeranged.
You see, this is what the CBN challenge in terms of managing the money in our environment really is. You see, we can be cashless. It is possible. You see, it's just that people have a love for putting spittle on the hand and counting money.
Do you think it's love or is it because it's a necessity?
No. I don't see it as necessity because number one, what really do I need to do if, for example, I have the opportunity to swap my card? A lot of people don't have card, and of course that's also understandable because they said, oh, if I have card, I cannot control the appetite to go use the card or withdraw. Now, these are some of the issues that we need to actually be speaking to. But what CBN is saying is that having too much money in the hands of people is not even enabling them to even know the money that is in circulation and how this money is moving.
Is the money CBN is looking for in the hands of common people?
Oh yes, whether you like it or not, if you have 10,000 in your hand and you have it in the hands of 20 million people, then that's already a huge source of money. And this is why a lot of people are piling money in the houses, and that is not really what is required. CBN need to know what size of money in the circulation, and these are part of the things that can help them actually track and monitor what the inflation rate in society is. So what do I want to do? I want to pay offering church, and I say, oh, the church account is sent there. I transfer to the account. What do I need to do? I want to buy pepper, and the person who is selling pepper, I just dial a code. That person gets it, and that's what I'm saying. You go to Rwanda today, the person who is doing motorbike transportation, even bicycle transportation, they don't ask for cash.
No, we have to know that when yes, but one thing why one of the excuses after carrying out their study why the Emefiele administration of the CBN, why do I keep calling it that? No, was talking about using the cash crunch, was that after the study, they realized that lots of the cash in circulation in Nigeria are in the hands of criminals and a few people who are engaged in banditry, in kidnapping, and most of the monies are in their hands because when they are demanding for monies to be paid for ransom, they demand cash. And though after they've demanded cash, some of it goes back to the banking system, but not most of it and not all of it, because it is used for illicit purpose, like acquiring weapons and other arms to carry out or continue that business in that illicit industry. So it was in the hands of non-state actors, not in the hands of common Nigerians who were going about to
if a bandit, or whether you call them kidnappers, and they have access, that cash can stay with them because they also need to dispense with the cash. Either they are using it for purchases.
Oh, they brought in a lot of cash because the CBN told all Nigerians to bring back their money, and they did.
What I mean is that these people need the cash for a lifestyle. So the cash actually can remain in their hands. But what I'm telling you is that this study I did was in 2006.
Do you think that's
2006 today is getting to how many years?
That's 18 years.
That is almost 20 years.
20 years.
Now, what I'm saying to you, 20 years ago, I was in the northern part of this country, and I can tell you that a lot of people hold cash at home.
So that study you did in 2006, do you think it's still relevant in 2025?
That is the point that you have to underscore. Why were they holding cash? And that was why when you see even the same MFLA issues you talk about, you saw so much cash that were rotting, that people are putting under their bank. These are people, they are not criminal hand. That's what I'm saying. That
could they be politicians? Because one with the business,
they don't necessarily have to they don't necessarily have to be politicians. That is what I'm saying to you. You see, there's a cultural dimension to this conversation, and that is why when we are doing things, it is always good. You see, because it is only in Nigeria I have a country where we do a lot of things with assumption in our head without going to ask the person who is keeping the money the reason why he's keeping the money. Now, this study I did for Bank PHB then, before they changed their name. Now, what was were they going to do? Bank PHB was going to open a window for Islamic banking. And I was commissioned to go do that study in the north to see whether the Northerners were willing to put money in that bank.
Okay, that was the cultural, religious issue that you talked about.
So when, by the time we finished that study, it was clear that they could distinguish that this commercial bank, they don't sit on the board, they don't know what they are doing with the money. My religion for example, piggery farm. So what if my money is used now to go and fund a piggery farm?
But that's one section of the country.
No, and that's the largest part of the country. So what you are saying is that you don't know where the 40% of the unbanked are. And there's so much money in their hand because they are also in the economy. What we should be doing is to say, how do we really study this environment so that we can speak to the cultural dimension or the religious dimension to some of this problem that is actually affecting the banks. So we cannot be assuming that, oh, this is what it is. And this is a problem that is fundamental to solving Nigerian challenge because there's little or no research that is being done. We start business, no research. We introduce policy, no research. We just hear somebody say something and we go ahead and begin to set structure in place to address those issues. But it's always fine that people have to find out what is the root cause of a problem. And it's only when you find out the root cause that you can actually provide a solution that will address the symptoms that you are seeing. But most times we chase symptoms and we don't look at the root causes.
I'll say that research is left for the CBN to carry out to know where this cash is, whether some of them are based on religious reasons, criminal reasons, political reasons, business reasons, or even the fear of you putting your money in the bank and not being able to have access to it when you need it. So you rather keep them under your bed so that your bed can also be your bank.